Good evening, everybody, again, and thank you for attending this evening's seminar or webinar, I should say, and you're very welcome. So tonight we'll be discussing corporate sustainability in 2026 and where do we go from here. My name is Jane, and I look after recruitment and enrolment for executive education programs here at Trinity Business School. We're really delighted to have you with us this evening. Sustainability continues to be an important issue for us here in TBS and for organisations. And we also know that the landscape is changing. So this evening really provides an opportunity to take stock of where things stand in 2026, what this means for organisations in practice, and where do we go from here. I'm delighted to be joined this evening by our fantastic panel. Firstly, Dr. Dorothy Maxwell, Partner and Head of Sustainability at BDO Ireland. Dorothy also teaches on our postgraduate certificate in Sustainable Development for Business. Dorothy has extensive experience internationally in sustainability and sustainable business practice, and she'll start us off this evening by speaking directly to this webinar's topic. We're also joined by Dr. Max Scholmar, Program Director for our sustainability programs here at Trinity Business School. We'll hear from Max as well, and he'll bring his own perspective to the discussion, including what's changing in the sustainability landscape, what this means for organisations, and how this connects with the work that we're doing through our sustainability programs here in Trinity. And importantly, we're joined by two alumni of our postgraduate cert in Sustainable Development for Business, Sai Bharadwaj Kamanamanchi, Senior EHS Advisor at Mercury, and Andrea Bahrain, Sustainability Manager at Grant Thornton. So thank you all for being here. It's really great to have your insights and your expert advice on this topic. Later in the session, we'll hear Sai and Andrea will speak directly to their own experience of doing this program, whether they've been able to apply the learnings into their professional roles, what sustainability means to them. And if you have any questions from our audience throughout the session, please feel free to pop it in the chat. We will monitor that chat as we go along, and there will be time for Q&A hopefully towards the end of the call. Just to say as well that we are recording this webinar, so anybody that registered to attend will get a recording of this tomorrow. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to hand over directly to Dorothy, and Dorothy will take us through the sustainability landscape as it stands now. Dorothy, over to you.
Thanks, Jane, and hi, everybody. Good evening. It's lovely to be here, and thanks so much for the invitation. And I should say, just in terms of my role, I'm actually the principal at a company called the Sustainable Business Group. so not BDO, don't worry. That's I think more relevant maybe also for tonight is I'm an adjunct lecturer on Trinity's postgraduate certificate in sustainable development in business, and very vested as an educator in this space. And in my own career, I've done many different roles in industry and policy and so forth. But I think one of the things I noticed throughout it, I'm working about 30 years in sustainability, is that it is so dynamic that one of the things I found is continuous professional development, constantly keeping you up to speed is absolutely a key feature that is needed in this space. And, you know, our topic for tonight, we're talking about is sustainability still a strategic priority? Is there a business case for it? It's fascinating to me in my day-to-day work. You know, I work with public sector companies, I work with private sector companies, and I think at this time, the business case for sustainability, whatever type of organization you are, and future proofing for it is as compelling as it has ever been. And, you know, when we look at things like the energy price shocks that we've seen with the Iran and Ukraine wars, the extreme weather that we've been having from wildfires and drought here on our doorstep in the EU, but also in North America this summer, you know, the business case for all of us in terms of climate change, it's absolutely obvious. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of a landscape picture just to give you a little bit of sense of that and articulate that a bit more. Thanks for putting that up, Jane. But I think one of the challenges, you know, while that business case is absolutely clear, is that there are a lot of mixed messages in terms of sentiment, whether it's from the policy side or from the market side. And I think for any organization at this time, that makes navigating this very fast changing landscape quite a confusing space. And I think that is a really important rationale for organizations to keep themselves informed, to keep themselves educated. And that's certainly a key feature of what we're doing on the Trinity course in sustainable development. So let me unpack. My role tonight is really to unpack a little bit more of this landscape. And I hope you can see this visual. It's busy, but that kind of is the point. And if we look at it, and I'm going to take you through the pillars from left to right. If we start at the left-hand side, the geopolitical situation that we're in, there is constant change. That is the reality of it. And we know the ESG backlash from the US is loud. We know there are mixed messages now from the EU as security and defense are key priorities. So that, to begin with, is a challenging position. But as we move over to the next pillar, climate and nature, risk and cost, the reality and actually the dichotomy is that nothing has changed in terms of the risk from climate and from nature emergencies, irrespective of that noisy dialogue. And in 2024, we breached for the first time a 1.5 degrees temperature rise. So we're now in a space where we're focusing on not just mitigating, but adapting to climate change. And that's impacting organizations in terms of cost and increasingly business continuity. We saw that this summer. And costs are mounting from climate-induced floods, wildfires, droughts, etc. And about 2 years ago, this was estimated at $2 trillion over the last decade. But of course, that's a movable feast now. And if we look at Ireland, for flooding alone, Central Bank of Ireland estimates that Irish organizations are paying about 101 million euros per annum in terms of disruption for flooding and things like insurance or challenges. So that's a risk and a cost framing on this issue. But if we move over to the next pillar, the other big issue is opportunity, and that is in the net zero transition. And I feel that train has definitely left the station here in the EU, but also in China and Asia. So from a competitive advantage perspective, I think from the US perspective, it's losing out in terms of this. And I think one of the really interesting cases that we saw of this is with the Iran war, when we look at the renewable energy business case. So if you're a business or a consumer and you're in a country like Portugal or Spain that has a really significant mix of renewable energy on your grid, you've been more insulated from these price shocks than we have here in Ireland. So, for example, at the moment, electricity is about 22 cents per kilowatt hour in Portugal, whereas here in Ireland, we're paying about 41 cents. So that's simply because of the tying to fossil fuels. So all of that business case is starting to be made much more visible. And then if we move over and we think about the policy frame that we're in, while Ireland hasn't been as fast as it should be in terms of its climate actions, that is increasingly now moving, and our policy framing is clear. We have a 51% target by 2030 to reduce our emissions and a net zero target by 2050. So that's all unchanged. And for any organizations that are in sectors like energy, agriculture, land-based sectors, built environment, transport, industry, there's a huge amount of activity underway in those sectors. We're tracking at about a 23% reduction in emissions compared to that 51%, so still a huge amount to do. And if you're a corporate, you're going to be feeling the pressure to have science-based targeted reductions and to really credibly be proving that and to be looking at your value chain, not just your own business. And, you know, this situation is very turbulent. We have plenty of conflicts in this. In Ireland, the growth of data centers is a huge issue with the footprint that brings, but interesting, the technology opportunities that brings. And the other thing I would say about the Irish situation is investment. We're putting about 235 billion up to 2035 2025 in investing in the grid, renewables, low carbon transport fuels, finally moving the engine on offshore wind, things like hydrogen and storage for renewables. So again, this is all very much sitting in the opportunity competitive advantage space. And as we move over to the next pillar, there is huge amount of law for companies that are putting products and services onto the market that requires them to prove and have really credible data that those products have good traceability back in their value chain in terms of environmental and labor issues. And I know that there is a sentiment that actually a lot of the law has pulled back. For any of these companies in these sectors, that's definitely not the case. So you can see some of the examples here. This year alone, we have forced labor law. We have new law that came in last week on packaging and packaging waste, eliminating things like forever chemicals, PFAS chemicals. We have the eco-design of sustainable products regulations. This is all for textiles, for construction materials, where you have digital product passports that prove the traceability of what's happening back in your value chain. And many other sectors are impacted. So all of that is a lot for companies, particularly to keep up with. And then as we move over to the final pillar, it's about how do you finance what you want to do on sustainability, but also how do you communicate it to your stakeholders and manage all this data. And I think when I look at finance in my time in sustainability, there is so much available, whatever size of company now you are. It's no longer a barrier, which is excellent. You have grant schemes, you have sustainability link loans, and before the end of by the end of this year, we'll have the version 2 of the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulations, which basically ups the game in terms of capital markets and their requirements because they're looking to de-risk their investment as well. And then in terms of communication and reporting, we had a pullback with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive on competitiveness grounds in Europe. And that means that large companies are the ones that are in scope for mandatory reporting. But I always feel with communication and communicating to your customers, to your stakeholders, if you don't communicate, they assume you're not doing anything. And greenwash is a big problem. So I think the voluntary regime of reporting is what I'm seeing a lot in my day-to-day through schemes like the VSME standard, that is the European standard now for voluntary reporting and quite user-friendly. And the other interesting trend that's happening is about new legislation, again, coming up on empowering consumers on the green transition. So this is, if you're putting any consumer products onto the market, you can no longer say they're green or eco. You actually have to prove it and have all that information. So that is a lot to me that says this huge business case there. We also have the opportunity with digital. How do we manage this data? How do we balance the pluses of AI with its footprint as well in that, which is another part of sustainability now. So I'll leave it there. I hope that's given you a picture of why sustainability and corporate sustainability certainly continues to be a priority 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dorothy. So we might kind of end the screen share now, Jane, so we can kind of have the full screen for the next section. I think that would be great. Yeah, so a warm welcome also from my side as the program director of this Sustainable Development for Business PG Cert. I'm very happy to join this call. Dorothy already mentioned she is an essential part of the lecturing team on the program, and so it's great to have that perspective. So one thing that I want to kind of highlight is I think the past few years the sustainability conversation in business was a lot around compliance. So there is new regulation coming down the track. So we need to look at this now because we need to be compliant. And that brought a lot of additional people into the conversation. But in the end, the core insight is that it is a strategic priority for any business to focus on sustainability. And I think that's, Dorothy, what you highlighted very clearly around these themes that are currently showing the complexity of sustainability in business in this current moment, but then also why it is strategic a priority for any business. You can't ignore it only at your peril. The essential drivers for why sustainability is so important are all in place, even if the compliance discussion is a different one than 2 years ago. That doesn't mean that the topic is less important for a business to consider. If you do not focus on it, it will haunt you later on. And to build a long-lasting competitive advantage, that's what you need to prioritize. Core dimensions are around climate, customer demand, you have already mentioned. And also for businesses that are not directly affected by the European regulations, some of their clients might be, so if you are a medium-sized business, then you will be asked questions now that you might not have the data for, and you basically need to get ready and you need to prepare yourself to be in business as well, even if you're not directly affected by these regulations. So I feel like it was probably a little bit too much focused on compliance only, and kind of the bigger picture around sustainability here is really important. And that's also what we really focus on in our own teaching portfolio on the Sustainable Development for Business program. That we really want to underscore kind of the fundamental perspective on what a business is about, and then providing the tools to really shape a business to really harness long-lasting competitive advantage in a complex landscape. And that's what really sustainability equips you to do. And that's also what I think one of the key points is also kind of change management and leadership, that you really need to be able to advance new ideas in a business to make change. And maybe, Dorothy, can you maybe comment a bit on your perspective on what it takes for someone to advance this in a business that might not have focused on sustainability too much in this current moment? What have you seen? What do you think is required to make this work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably one of the most challenging things, if you like, because you are focusing on behavior change, and how do you actually make change in an area that people need to get awareness on. They need to understand the business case. They need to understand how it relates to their function, whether it's finance, risk, and so forth. And there are many, many elements to that. And there's a hearts and minds part to it about engagement. And then there's a facts-based part to it about making that business case. And that, in that sense, I feel it can be one of the most challenging. And also, you know, as we were talking about earlier, this field is moving so fast that keeping different parts of an organization up to speed on what is coming, that they would be able to future-proof or see the new opportunities or not miss a massive competitive advantage. That's all part of it, and building that into an organization to be able to do that. So all of those things are quite sophisticated for any business to be able to do. And I often feel in sustainability people with that skill set are a little bit like translators. You're able to have those conversations and engage with those different stakeholders to activate those hearts and minds and those particular switches that happen. It's the what's in it for me type of conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's also what we're seeing on the projects that our participants are doing as part of the program, that there's often a strong kind of change management component included, which we are kind of also covering in the teaching. But then it's also really about finding these kind of ways in the culture that these businesses have. How do you kind of make this conversation happen? Which people do you need? As you said, stakeholder engagement, stakeholder management. How do you bring the right coalition together to then start an initiative that makes a change? And I think we will hear from on that journey from our two current participants who can talk a bit about their projects. And that's pretty much what we're seeing every year, that there are a lot of exciting ideas and projects, and then you can kind of apply the skills that you acquire in the teaching. And sometimes we had obviously also a lot of reporting related projects over the past years as well. And it's also quite challenging to set up a reporting framework. And also for that, you need kind of buy-in. And so that's definitely a challenging aspect of it, but very exciting then once you kind of get going, and you can actually put it into action. So I think that's a really important part to have leadership and initiatives that actually make a difference. And sometimes they can be small, but are equally relevant. The other, I think, core point is that for sustainability, it might sound sometimes abstract and kind of removed from the core business, but it actually isn't. Ultimately, every business is about stakeholder value creation. And once you kind of unpack that notion, you will see that sustainability actually lies at the heart of what a business does. And that's really also a bit of a kind of a conceptual perspective change that you kind of can acquire. And then there are a lot of tools out there that are very helpful to get this perspective and then see the connection to value creation, which is kind of the core purpose of any business ultimately, but it's not only financial value. And often you get more financial value also by looking at social and environmental aspects as well, and innovating in this space and be creative in this space. So it's an exciting space. We always have highly motivated students, a great group spirit over the years now. So for me, for faculty, and I'm sure Dorothy, you will agree with that, it's a lot of fun to do it, because you see so many exciting ideas working with kind of relevant problems that society is grappling with, and then a tiny piece of progress can be made towards it with these kind of initiatives that individual businesses are ultimately doing. And so that's really rewarding for students and also for us. Ultimately, we do this program because we want to see the change, and we are seeing it. It's there, and kind of every participant kind of becomes a small kind of change agent then ultimately in their own organizations. And that's really, really good. So I guess that might be a good way for us, Jane,
Yes,
to
absolutely. Thank you,
bring
Max.
in our kind of two great students from our current cohort.
Yeah.
Just finished the final report 2 weeks ago. So they can give us a good insight on their experience. So Jane, let's...
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Max, and thank you again to Saya and Andrea for being here. So fresh off the finish line from the postgrad in sustainable development for business. I might just put a question to you, Saya, first. I suppose, what were you looking for when you decided to look for a program in sustainability? What drew you to this course in particular?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. Hello, all. So I'm completely a different sector person. Like I deal EHS, so mostly for me it's environmental sustainability and health and safety. So for me, I came this as just assuming it will be a theory, morely theoretical. But when we actually started this program and when we run through all those tools and system thinking which was provided to us. And my one key issue, like what motivated me to launch into this program is, so when I go to the clients discussions and all, the key thing right now, like if I go to a Google data center, somewhere. So the clients are looking for this sustainability terminology and everything like that should be in every report, whatever we are placing. So that's my key motivation when I started this course. But when we ended 2 weeks back, that's completely different. It's just not terminologies or something, like it's actual systems what we are using, and sustainability is everywhere. It's just we need to have those tools to look after them. Yeah.
Very good. That's, yeah. Thank you so much, Sai. That makes a lot of sense. Andrea, I might go to you for the next question. I suppose, you're both busy working professionals at a senior level in your organizations, and this is a postgraduate certificate that you're doing part-time alongside a full-time job. How did you find doing the course and balancing it alongside your role in Grant Thornton?
Yeah, thanks, Jane, and thanks again for having us here. It was interesting. It was at times not tough, but you really had to kind of, put your head down and really focus on carving out time, one, to be chatting with your colleagues, from the course, but two, to really be grappling with the coursework, with the articles, the assessment, to really get the most out of the course. So, of course, we all very different people. We all have very different schedules. So even doing different group projects, that was really interesting. But you find a way because you're so invested in the course. There's such an amazing energy from the group itself. Even I talk about the team being like a bit of a support group that we have. We kind of all in it together, that you find the time and it almost complements what you're doing. Luckily for me, I work in sustainability day to day. So it kind of was just like a natural extension to my day. But having said that, it kind of shifted my perspective from, at the end of a work day, and it brought about a different thinking to going into my next work day or going into my weekend. So it's definitely, it takes time, but it's well worth it, because it kind of just completely changes your thinking. So yeah, as I was saying, even just from a systems thinking perspective, just your brain just starts thinking about so many different elements that when you put the time in, to a course like this, it's well worth it.
Thank you so much. Great to hear that. And these courses are only successful when we have great participants contributing, and bringing their great ideas to the table. So thank you for that. Sai, I might go back to you then and say, were you able then as well you said about taking it wasn't just the language, but the practicalities back to your organization. Is there an example of maybe, how you look at things differently, or how you would approach something, a meeting or something differently with the learnings that you have taken from the course?
I can name many. Yeah. The first one, me and Andrea worked actually on that. It's stakeholder salience. So like when we got many papers and when we started reading, like for me, like I generally don't go into the core of the paper. So I generally just read straight away what is the summary, just go away. But when I started looking at these papers, actually the first one I always bring is PLU, power, legitimacy, urgency, and I always mention that in our meetings as well, Max. So like wherever I go, this is the proper structure I found in this course. It is sustainability as well as it is organizational tools which I got, like who has the power, who has the legitimacy, and who is urgent for covering it up. So that's one good piece. And also with respect to applications, the good example I could give you is my actual action project. So previously when I used to deal with EHS stuff, and when we used to go give the handover packs to our clients, sustainability is just not a key factor in that. So what is life cycle assessment? I don't know before. Like if you ask me, I don't know that before. So after this, all these terminologies are coming out from me, like CSR, the life cycle assessment, DPP, digital passport. So lads, look, this is coming up. So why can't we get ourselves ready for this? And I did a project on that. And right now we are actually implementing that in one of the site, and everyone was happy. Our client, everyone was happy with that. And there are many examples. This is just two, but each and every subject, if you go through individual subject, like there are a lot of examples I could give.
Excellent. And just maybe alongside that question, Sai, had you an interest, like personally, in sustainability? I know your role isn't specifically to do with sustainability, like you said, but had you an interest personally in sustainability, and has that shifted at all since you have participated in the course?
200%. Yeah, yeah. And I started looking like I became that person now. Like if I started buying anything, okay, turn it back, start looking what it is like, whether they are greenwashing it, whether what's actually they are mentioning. If I see an advertisement, oh, what is it? Are they true numbers? I work with Dorothy on a project over there. So she said, okay, review a company's sustainability report. So I started reviewing it, and numbers are very good. Very good. They are very good. So I said, look, this is all good. No, go deeper, look into the actual numbers. So then I realized, no, this is all not what they are showing you. Like there is actually a difference. So when you actually understand this terminologies and everything,
Okay.
you will see the actual difference what the corporates are publishing. It is a learning, very good learning. And that changed me like every day to day, in my personal life, professional life, everywhere.
Wow. Okay. So interesting. Thank you, Sai. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Jen.
Andrea, I'd be interested in even putting the same question to you. Had you an interest in sustainability personally, and has that shifted at all or changed throughout your participation in this course?
Yeah, I mean, a natural interest in sustainability. I think my passion for human rights and social justice, happened many, many years ago. And so kind of working in the space day to day, as I was saying, the interest was there. But doing a course like this, and especially working alongside Sai and our colleagues from the course, just getting so many different perspectives from people in completely different organizations to me, completely different perspectives that they have in the experience of sustainability and their understanding, even of the terminologies. That slide that Dorothy had, I remember some of our colleagues going, I have absolutely no idea what all of these acronyms mean. And even for myself, having learned a little bit more, as Sai was saying, like delving deep into it, the interest has been anchored and validated, and kind of it's been an experience for me that's certainly kind of left its mark in that I'm on the right course, because sustainability is just embedded in absolutely every facet of business and of life. So it really was a joy to be a part of, and just so grateful for the relationships, the opportunities, the learnings, the hard conversations that we had as a group. There were many a time that we, had very, very difficult conversations, but well worth it, because those are the kinds of conversations that we are having in business, in our day-to-day jobs. So yeah, the interest continues. It definitely has not stopped.
Thank you so much. And I'd be remiss on my role as recruitment manager here to not maybe ask you, Andrea, and Sai indeed, we are enrolling for the upcoming intake in the postgrad that takes up again in October this year. What advice would you give to anybody thinking of maybe applying, but they're not sure if they can take on a postgrad course? Would you have any advice to give the interested applicant?
Well, immediately do it. Just absolutely don't waste any time in enrolling. Don't be afraid of the hard work, because hard work comes with so much benefits. Don't be afraid of really putting in the hours, tackling the content, pushing back as well. Like this is not the group itself, the lecturers, the content. It's not for us to kind of just take and say, okay, that sounds good. That's the whole premise of sustainability, is to be looking for alternatives. And so don't be afraid, get your teeth stuck into it. It's an amazing time to really be in sustainability when there's so many different questions, as opposed to it being the popular choice. So yeah, I would highly recommend the course, and just highly recommend throwing your whole self into it if you can.
Yeah, I
Thank
would
you
say
so
the
much.
same. Sorry. I
No,
would say the
please.
same, Jen. like even if you are not a sustainability professional, like this course starts from the basics. So like you don't need to know all the stuff. So when I started here, I don't know huge stuff of sustainability. I know a few bits and pieces, but like when I started it, you will get along. So like I would also suggest, like if you get a chance, it is very good. The experience of the course is awesome. I would say that.
Excellent. Thank you
Yeah.
both so much. Great ambassadors for the course and for Trinity. So thank you. I really appreciate your insights. I have a couple of slides in the interest of time. I'll throw up now just in case we have anybody here that wants to get a quick look at the overview information on the program that both Saya and Andrea did. Give me a second. Let's go to now. Can everybody see this?
Yeah, that's clear.
Very good. Thank you. This is just an overview. There's a lot of information, but I will, of course, send these slides out along with the recording. I only have 2 slides to show you, and that is that the postgrad certificate that we've been speaking about is open for application now. There's quite a little bit involved in getting an application together, just in terms of the documents required for the Trinity portal, the student portal. So if anybody is interested in participating or just even finding out more about the course, do get in touch with me directly. I'll show you my information in just a moment. But also it's on for 1.5 days per month. So it's on a Thursday afternoon and an all-day Friday from 9 to 5. And that's just once a month for 8 months in total, running from October to June next year. Their fees are 8,500, but for anybody whose organisation is the private sector based in Ireland and willing to support them, there is that Climate Ready SkillNet funding of 50% available. So it does make those fees a bit more manageable and bringing them down to 4,250. And then, as I say, just 4 or 5 documents required, not all of them if they're not applicable, of course, but do reach out if you have any questions at all. What I will say is that it's closing for application in just 3 weeks or so. So it would be important to get your application in before then if you're interested in being considered for the course, or even if just you have questions about it, you want to learn more, do get in touch. Separately, there is a foundational micro-credential course that will look at all things sustainability from a more kind of foundational standpoint. And Max Schormeyer is the program director on this one also. So this is an 8-week online session. And it starts on the 2nd of November. I mention it as well as because this time for eligible applicants, so basically anybody living in Ireland for 3 of the last 5 years, there's an 80% funding available. This isn't always available. It's available for the next intake. We're not promised anything beyond then, but it's great to see, government is still supporting this through the SkillNet funding, through the Springboard funding. So 50% on STB, Sustainable Development for Business, and 80% on this ESG course, bringing the fees from 2,000 down to just €400. So again, a couple of documents required. Do get in touch with me if you have any questions at all. You'll see my details on the screen there, but also, as I say, happy to send out these slides to anybody that has registered for this webinar. So I'll stop sharing there, and I'm just going to go to the chat and see if we have any questions in. Bear with me a second.
We do. We have a few points in the Q&A, Jane. So
yes, I see that
I
now.
have kind of taken a look. So maybe I can comment on Marco's question around kind of the translating. And Dorothy, if you want, you can do that. You can comment on that as well.
Happy to do that, Max.
Yeah, if you want to, you can go also first. It's not a problem.
No, you go for it, and I'll
Okay.
jump in.
Okay, all right. So what I would say is it's definitely a challenge to bring different stakeholder perspectives together. So obviously you work in this field, you know it. But there are important stakeholder engagement tools out there that allow companies to actually engage with these different stakeholders in a way that is productive and not destructive, and is actually also trying to incorporate these different perspectives in a serious way. It is also obviously part of our program that we look at stakeholder engagement quite deeply, and there are different kind of communication tools that can be used. Multi-stakeholder initiatives, for example, multi-stakeholder partnerships are a very important tool out there, where companies, together with other stakeholders, create initiatives to tackle social or environmental challenges. And a good and well-designed partnership would be one that incorporates these different stakeholders from the start and brings them together, and sets a commonly accepted standard or approach how to tackle the issue. Obviously, in reality, there are often tensions. It's not always straightforward and easy, but I think we have seen quite successful multi-stakeholder initiatives in several industries over the years. Just one that I have done a lot of research on would be in the textile industry in Bangladesh, the now called International Accord. That's a quite successful example if you want to look into that, where it's clear that working conditions have been very problematic. There have been a lot of health and safety risks, and this initiative really improved the situation over several years. So there are good examples, but it's definitely also something where it's not easy to do it. It takes time and effort and the right approach to do it. So Dorothy, if you want to add something to that, please do.
Thanks, Max, and thank you, Marcos. These are really good questions, and I'm looking now through the three of them, and like Max said, I can see you're very vested in this. The only things I would add are, if you're dealing with multi-stakeholder collaboration, it sounds like you are across those stakeholder groups, identifying what the common challenges and solutions are and what your purpose is there, and where you want to go forward, but also getting some key examples first, practical results. What is the low-hanging fruit, so people can see the value, and then you get more buy-in, because you were talking about how do you continue this into the long term in terms of governance models and so forth. And it might be that there's a particular challenge that requires people coming together, and it can be time bound, but then it can be something that maybe other groups go off from that, and there's something else comes from it. I think it always has to have a purpose, and often dividing up by sector is a way of narrowing down the interests, and that's quite a focus within stakeholder engagement to do that, because you've common issues that are material across those. So those would be my suggestions, and if you're on the course next year, look forward to hearing what you're doing, because it sounds fascinating in that area.
Indeed, Dorothy. Indeed, I agree. So then we have another question regarding the Inaction project, and I'm very happy to talk about that. So Sai already mentioned it briefly. It's a core part of the program. We do not want to stay abstract, theoretical. We want to kind of be hands-on and practical, and the Inaction project is exactly where this kind of comes together. The academic background, the tools that you learn in the modules, and then also your own context. So be it your own organization you're working in, or your own situation outside of it. There are kind of different versions of it, but usually people that do this course work in an organization, and there are sustainability challenges, and as part of the program, they would kind of identify in a structured process where we help them to identify the right problem to work on, and then over the months that you're doing the program, you would do the work of actually kind of fleshing out the project, and then ultimately also writing up a project report, and ultimately implementing an idea, a small solution, a small step forward, and sometimes a bigger step forward. It depends on the program, on the project that you're developing. But you do not have to kind of come in already with the perfect idea. There is a process to help you develop this idea. But our core idea really is that we want you to have something really tangible in hand when you go out, not only in terms of I have learned and I have a certificate, but I have actually also done a project. put the learnings into action as you are going through the program. And that's a really exciting part. It's a lot of fun to do it. Another thing that I really just want to highlight is the group spirit we have had over the years on this program has always been outstanding. So the peer learning aspect, don't underestimate the power that kind of is unleashed once you bring like-minded people together in a room from very different backgrounds with many different viewpoints and different levels of expertise. It's always very diverse, but that really creates the energy and the momentum in the room. And I guess looking at the time,
Yes,
unfortunately, Jane, we have to end.
yeah.
And I just want to kind of say, if you take anything with you from today's webinar, then it should be kind of now is not the moment to ignore sustainability. It's the moment to kind of double down, even if it's not as much talked about at the moment in the news than it was a few years ago. It's important to focus on it. There are a lot of benefits for it. And skilling up in this area will have big rewards over the coming years. And so it's a great moment to engage with this topic.
Excellent. Thank you so much to you, Max, to Dorothy, to Andrea, and to Sai for all those insights. Really interesting stuff. There's so much in there. I mean, I think we could talk about this stuff all evening. Certainly you could. And I thank you to all our attendees for taking the time to join us this evening. There may have been some questions in mind that you want to come to us with, so do send them on to me. If we can't answer them here, we can get Max or Andrea to come back to us as well. So do get in touch if you have any questions. Thank you for your attention this evening. Thank you to our wonderful panel. Really appreciate your time, and we'll see you all online again, or we'll see you all again, and I will send the recording tomorrow to those that registered. Very
Perfect.
good.
Thanks
very much.
everybody.
Good
Thanks,
evening,
everyone.
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.